can you talk to us about how you're using Google Classroom and some of the benefits?
Google Classroom basically is my textbook and my communication tool. Especially, it's so beneficial to my students and to myself when I'm not here, even more so than when I am. The sub therefore doesn't have to, be confused about maybe what I'm requiring for them to be taken care of in my absence. And it is something that I can tweak from anywhere. And if I need to, change it, I can do that at the drop of a hat. The sub can contact me, or the students can, and say, I'm having trouble getting in, some technical trouble, or they can tell me if they are having some kind of a non-understanding moment in what I have presented to them or what I have put in Google Classroom for them as their assignment. What I do is I download into their Google Classroom the text that I want them to be responsible for, so that they can go back and click on it at any time and it's there. They can do their questions, they can reread, they can do whatever it is that's made through that assignment on later, submissions or assignments that I've made. But the text will always be there. They don't have to take their book home with them, because we don't adopt textbooks anymore or anything, like that. These are things that if they want to save it in another format or whatever they want to do with it, they don't even have to be online to be able to read it. So if they know I'm not going to be where I'm going to have Wi-Fi access, they can take and have that text just where they can just read it. The one project that we did along with the Exeter book is basically, it is a huge time period of loneliness and isolation, and people, there were very few people, and that was in all their poetry and all their writings, and I had them concentrate on when they were the most lonely and what appeared something that would be lonely to them. And what they did with Google Classroom is they then were able to get online, find any picture that they wanted to that represented loneliness to them, and then basically most of them they could just drag into their assignment, and then they submitted it to me. And then I was able to project those up on the screen in our classroom, and it was real interesting what some of them thought were their idea of loneliness as compared to some of the others, but they took it very seriously. They didn't put up like silly stuff, and a lot of them wanted to share their thoughts on the picture and why that part of loneliness to them, or what it represented, that I'm looking at. And it is a picture of a girl walking down a road to really nowhere. And I could tell, by knowing some of my students, that maybe is where they are at right now too. And some of them were able to talk in that way and to share that way too. I love the aspect of it, of like these loneliness photos and their assignments and whatever. It shows me how many are done and how many are not done. Google Classroom for me has been something that I felt like I was learning along with the students, especially on the onset. And now that I'm a little bit more comfortable with some of the things, that I feel like I am more the teacher, but they often show me things in the computer that we can adapt into Google Classroom. And it has alleviated students coming in and say, what did we do yesterday? Or what's due? Or when do I have, because it's just a running log. I always try to put it over in topics, and they can just skim down through the topics, and if they go, reading comprehension, number 3, I don't think I was here for that day. Do I need to complete that? Is that something that, is going to be whatever? And so they can go right to it, and there it is. And it's very easy for them to go into, open it in their window, and then in Google Docs. And then they can type right there on the worksheet, or do whatever they want to, or whatever is best. Like with this one, what I had them do with it, there's the passage, this was some reading comprehension, there are the questions. They just highlighted their answer, you know, and they like to do different stuff rather than underline or do whatever. So they would highlight that. And then it saves it. And I have to tell them all the time, they're like, where do I save it? Is it going to go away? It saves it automatically for them. They don't have to do anything about saving it. And that, to me, is wonderful because we all forget to save something a lot of the time somewhere. And then they just get out of it completely, it's saved, and go back to Google Classroom. And there's a place on their computer where they pull it up and then they submit it, and they look at it, they make sure, okay, yeah, I want to submit that. And then after that, the beauty of that is, once I get it, you know, there's not anything that they do with it or can do with it, especially if it's like a paper that I don't want them to go back in and change their answer. And it records it and it tells me what time that they've sent it in and all those type of things too. But for them to go back in and work on it some more, which you can do, and they just submit me what they got finished up to that point, then they unsubmit it. But I'll be able to see all of this activity. And I really like that part of it too. When we get into research, this was just like a godsend. I was used to them submitting this, submitting that on paper, and then, you know, eventually I get all these stacks of paper. What we're able to do through Google Classroom is they are able to go into Google Docs and Google Drive, and they do their work. And they'll do their site page. If they don't document it right, or if it's in not the right format, I can work on my computer with them working on their computer and highlight what they need to change, and not do the work for them, but highlight it, you know, and they can be sitting there and they'll go, oh, okay. And I said, what does that need? And they'll say, oh, I forgot the comma right here. And then they put the comma in and they're done. So funny for them, because they would be like, well, now when do we turn in our rough draft? And I said, you did. And that's what I corrected, because I could correct it online, put notes out to the side, send it back to them, and then they could look at it, correct it, and send it back to me. There was no rough draft because they just took their paper and fixed it. And so it alleviated so much time and redoing things and duplicate of things and paper. Oh my goodness, the paper. And I could pull those up anytime. You know, if I was at home, if I was traveling, I could pull them up, and I was able to grade them so much faster because they were right here, you know, with me, and I was able to walk them through it and really show them where they were unable to fulfill the requirements of what a research paper is supposed to be and what it's supposed to be like. Right now, we're doing some things with Canterbury Tales, and yesterday, a problem that we've seen, they don't know how to summarize. And so there are 29 characters that are on, or pilgrims that are on this pilgrimage, and Canterbury Tales, Joshua, he describes them to no end. And this lesson I use, and as far as what's in the textbook, most textbooks, I relate it to that they are trying to get you to see descriptive writing, because so many of our students, they're okay with writing, the structure of it, but then they don't have anything really to say, or you don't see it, you can't see it in your mind or feel like you could smell it or touch it. And I said, you know, a lot of them have to take a praxis or MCAP or some kind of final test to test out of whatever, you know, degree or specification, you know, of their profession that they want to be. And so many of them, they have a writing part. And a lot of people do not pass the writing part for 3 or 4 times because they don't give enough of depth into what they're writing. They'll just state something, and then, but there's not anything to explain, or those adjectives or whatever. Chaucer does a really good job of that, but then on the flip side of that, they don't know how to summarize or condense. So this assignment, they were able to go in and type in what the profession of the characters were, their description that Chaucer gave about how they looked, and then also their personality and characteristics. But they had to condense it down. It couldn't be everything that he said. And so this was very useful because they could type it look at it and say, okay, how could I combine these two things together? Like if it was describing his tunic and it said it was green and embroidered with red and white flowers, and it had long bell sleeves, but it was short in length, and that's how it's described. And they needed to go in and say the tunic was this, this, this. And it really helped by being able to just delete words. And then they had just short ideas. Let me see. Next up, we will be kind of skipping on into the romantic period just a little bit, simply because it is October, it is close to Halloween, and Frankenstein a lot of times is what people think of. And so next week we will be doing some studies with it. They will actually create a monster using their Google Classroom and their Google Docs and submit that for other people to see. Now, it may not look like a monster like you and I may think, just like their loneliness photo, but some create that monster, what's a monster to them.